This is Coder Radio, episode 167 for August 14th, 2015. And welcome to Coder Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show taking a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and related technologies. This episode is brought to you by our two fine sponsors, DigitalOcean and Linux Academy. I'll tell you more about those great sponsors as this here show goes on. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week over there on that East Coast, yes, it's our host, who is excellent and established. Why, folks, it's Mr. Michael Dominic. Hey there, Michael.
Hello, Mr. Fisher. How are you?
Hey, happy Friday to you. You know,
happy Friday.
If we would have thought ahead, we could have done this in the afternoon, so we could have legitimately had a good excuse to drink. Because I'm getting into wine now.
That's true. Really?
Just a little bit, yeah.
Actually.
Yeah. Because, you know, it's just, I kind of have like this ongoing kind of gut issues that I have to kind of be careful with. And if I have like more than 2 beers in a night, I can sometimes aggravate it. 1 beer and I'm kind of okay. But you know what? 1 beer is never enough. It's like a potato chip, Mr. Dominic. So, but with the wine, if you know, I can't go crazy, but it doesn't seem to be aggravating any of those issues. So I've just been trying to find different wines that don't taste like rotten grapes, which has, for me, been difficult. But that's not what we're here to talk about today, is it? Are we here to talk about wine today?
I thought we were.
No, actually, you teased it. I don't know I think it actually was in the post show. I don't think it made it into the recording, but you wanted to talk about Vulkan coming to Android, so we've got some good information about that, and also some information about what's wrong with openGL. Why do we got to get rid of openGL? What's with all of this? We're going to talk about that a little bit and describe why Apple and Microsoft and Google all want to solve this problem in a big way. And then after that, we have to ask, has it been peak iPad and peak tablet? And before you go too far from that, somebody who creates a key piece of software for Jupiter Broadcasting has had to pull his app out of app stores, saying he's not making enough money. And it's the numbers, because he's been in business for over 10 years. And so the numbers he has before App Store, during App Store, and post App Store are astonishing and also a little depressing. So we'll get to that in a little bit. Plus, we have some really, really great feedback coming up, some thought-provoking feedback. And if we have time, we're going to talk about this article that the subreddit asked us to discuss: how to know when you're ready to be a freelance, how to know when you're ready to freelance as a self-taught coder. If we have time, we'll get to that too. We'll see. We have a lot of show to cover today. So let's start, Mr. Dominic, with something that you teased on the post show last week, and something our buddies over at Valve seem to be pretty excited about. Vulkan. And Vulkan is coming over to Android, which seems to be like a pretty huge deal. They're going to have feature sets on Vulkan, Android support's incoming, and the Kronos Group is offering to, basically, they're people behind Vulkan, is offering to basically become a full-fledged Android support group. Now, maybe we could take a quick deviation before we get to Vulkan. Maybe we could talk about what the hell they're trying to do here. And I think maybe the best way to sort of summarize this is Mike and I could break down why you want a low-level graphics API that's closer to the hardware. And something that doesn't use a bunch of extensions. But honestly, we could also, in the same breath, explain Metal, Apple's solution, and they do a much better job with pictures than we probably would solving or explaining the problem. So I'm going to play a little bit from their WWDC keynote, where they introduced Metal for iOS 8 back in 2014, which sort of is trying to solve the same problem. So I'll let Fred go here, I think his name is.
So, as you know, openGL is the standards-based way for high-performance 3D graphics on iOS, giving you access to the power of the A7 processor. But increasingly, if you look at what goes on in the performance of the game, in addition to what the game wants to accomplish, openGL ends up being a thick layer of overhead between the game and the hardware.
And obviously, this is going to be universal for Android, Linux, iOS, Windows.
Well, now we have Metal. And Metal dramatically reduces that overhead, giving the game near bare-to-the-metal access to the power of A7. The results are stunning, up to 10x faster draw call rates. Now, in addition to these dramatically reduced overheads, you get access not just to graphics, but to the compute power of the GPU. And Metal supports pre-compiled shaders and efficient multi-threading, so you can always get the most out of the processor. Now, we've been working with the leading...
Now, we could probably stop there, because all that is very true for Vulkan as well. In fact, there's an interesting demo online that we played a little bit of in Linux Unplugged this week, because we talked about this from a Linux desktop perspective as well. And in this video, it's called gnomes per second. And in this video, they compare on a Power VR chip, so something like the Nexus player is the unit they're demoing this on. And in this demo, they show Power VR Rogue GPUs running Vulkan on the left side and openGL ELS on the right side. And one of the things that really strikes me about this demo is, Vulkan is much, much better about using the GPU over the CPU. And when it does go to the CPU, Vulkan is much better at multi-threading. And so now we're seeing these phones with eight cores in them, and also, of course, desktops. This makes a lot of sense. And Vulkan seems to be very smooth. It's going to have a very clean way of feature sets, so that way game developers can write to these feature sets, and the Vulkan system is capable of determining what the hardware is capable of and then exposing that to the game. And it's capable of scaling from these Power VR GPUs all the way up to NVIDIA big-time desktop GPUs and ATI cards. Or, I'm sorry, AMD cards. So it seems to me, Mike, and I'm just kind of looking at the beginning of this, by Google backing Vulkan, they're kind of locking in Vulkan as the next openGL replacement. And I think this has huge ramifications for desktop gaming on Linux, for SteamOS, for mobile gaming. I don't know what it means for iOS exactly, probably nothing, which is going to be interesting in itself. And I think it's fascinating from the standpoint of the way Vulkan is built is, even if, like, say Microsoft didn't want to ever create like a feature set or a profile or whatever for Vulkan, the Kronos group could still make one. The developers could still target. It would still be the blessed official standard because it'd just be blessed by the Kronos group instead of Microsoft. Whereas if Vulkan did get support on, say, Mac OS X, Apple could have an Apple profile. I might be getting some of the vernacular wrong here, but they could have an Apple preset profile that developers could target. And if they never decide to do it, then Kronos Group can take that on. And it's a really interesting approach, and it seems to have a lot of longevity. And pretty much, I think anything that pretty much supports openGL at this point will be able to support Vulkan too. So I believe existing hardware on the market is pretty much good to go. So Google could have gone their own way here, right? They could have made a Metal or a DirectX, and we would be in a completely different situation. So I believe in this case, and I don't know if you see it differently, Mike, but this seems like good guy Google to me.
Good guy Google, huh?
Look at these gnomes per second. I mean, Vulkan's going to bring us good gnomes per second, finally. Look at that. That's some smooth gnomes per second right there. And no joke. I mean, that's going to make that's a bigger deal on battery life. If you start accelerating the UI, instead of having openGL accelerated UIs, you could have Vulkan accelerated UIs. This could eventually bring in an entirely new accelerated UI for just basic applications with much lower cost on battery life, potentially. And Google could have gone off and made their own thing. And maybe they still will, but
why would they?
Well, I mean, they do for a lot of other things in Android now. They've closed up a lot of aspects of Android, actually. That's been the only thing, is like, so imagine if they would have somehow, now let's just entertain this crazy idea. It may not even be possible. But you know how they've been sort of playing up everything, everything, Mike? They've taken the mail app, the browser, the camera app, everything is closed. They've just sort of abandoned the open source version that's in ASOP, and they've gone with closed play editions of all these apps. And imagine if they could have had Play Graphics. And when you got a Google Blessed device, you also got the Play Graphics API. And then they could rev the Play Graphics API like they rev all the other Play services. And it would be a huge, huge incentive to have a Google Play device, because developers are going to target these Play APIs. And man, wouldn't that also lock in people that are making these set-top boxes also to have to be hooked into Google? Kind of genius. But they didn't do it. Instead, they said, no, we're just going to bake Vulkan into Android. Now, how the hell they're going to do this, I don't know exactly. But I haven't looked into that area specifically. I don't know if it's going to be post-M or if they're going to issue updates to previous versions of Android or what their plan is. But I commend them for going this route instead of some sort of Play graphics route. Don't you see how they could have gone completely closed off, lock you into the Google ecosystem?
Yeah, but I don't understand why you think they would have. I mean, that's a huge effort, right?
It's a huge effort, but it's a huge incentive to have a Play device. Maybe we'll see. I think it was a good move, but maybe they'll eventually do what they do with ASOP and close it up.
Well, if you think about it, like Apple's differentiating iPads, which we'll talk about later, and a lot of their devices on having better gameplay, right? Android's not particularly strong in that area.
Maybe this will help. Oh yeah, that's right. So that's a good point. They're not necessarily in a market position of dominance, are they?
Right. So it's more a catch-up move than a advantage.
Now you've become a big Android guy, though. What do you think? Is this exciting?
It's funny. I use Android devices very differently than I use iOS devices. I rarely install apps on Android. I'm less interested in the new shiny hardware. I don't particularly play games on Android either. I mean, I play a couple casual ones. Warby's Adventure is fun.
Yeah, yesterday they announced the new S6 Edge Plus. So my phone is now outdated. It's less than 8 months old. My Samsung S6 Edge, which is fine. That happens. And then they announced the Note 5. And I think the S6 Edge. It was a new device. The curved screen, I was curious to see how well that looked like if it was sort of like an infinity pool for a screen and how content sort of goes off the edge. It turns out it's amazing. It's wonderful. It's an incredible experience. And when I show the phone to people, they ooh and ah at that. Like, it's surprising how universally impressed people are by the content sliding off the edge. But then there's the practical side, like typing, like the Q button, like the on a QWERTY keyboard, the buttons on the edge of the keyboard. Sometimes the taps don't register so well on the edges. If there's like a little ad and they put a little teensy tiny X up in the corner to close the full screen ad, yet you're going to spend 3 minutes trying to tap that ad if it's on the edge of the display. Like, it's just the swipe edge functions would be useful if there wasn't a 25-second delay before they activate sometimes if the phone's been sleeping for a while. It's just
okay. So you're not really loving it then.
Well, it's just the dream fades when you're 3 months into it, and it took 4 or 5, maybe 6 months before I finally got a software update that solved it, so I wasn't having to reboot the phone daily. It's better now, and it's a good phone, but it was like, I guess I'd forgotten that there's this cycle in Android hardware where you just kind of get burned, and there's always something better around the corner. And by the time your device finally starts to work kind of okay, there's a brand new device on the market. And it's not like that doesn't happen with other, like with the iOS devices or whatever before we had smartphones. But it took the wind out of my sails, and I'm like, you know what? I got caught up in it. I'll wait another 3 years again before or actually, the last time I got caught up in it was when the Nexus 5 came out. And I think that was a good purchase. And I don't regret the S6 purchase, but Samsung has some nice things about it, but there's a lot of show in it. And it just I have a hard time getting excited about it now. So we'll see. I'm kind of there with you. So, but if they could get, we're going to talk about the horrible state of tablets right now. And I don't know if you could get a really great graphics API. Maybe that would help. Maybe that would turn things around. Well, we'll talk about that here maybe in a moment. I don't know. Any other thoughts on Vulkan, Mr. Dominic?
Nothing major. No, I mean, I think it's interesting, and OpenGL is a little long in the tooth, but I don't really think it's going to be a huge game changer for a while.
I think it's coming up pretty fast. It's happening faster than I expected it to. Because, Vulkan has not been around for a super long time, and it's already getting pretty good adoption. That's Vulkan.
Well, it is a bit faster, true.
Yeah. We'll see where it goes. I'm excited as a Linux user, and so that's why, of course, I'm like, come on, everybody, hurry up, let's go. All right, I'll tell you about something else I'm excited about. Woo-wee, that's DigitalOcean. Head over to DigitalOcean.com right now and use our promo code CODERDIGITAL. That's one word, lowercase, over at DigitalOcean. Now, DigitalOcean rocks. They're a simple cloud hosting provider dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way for you to spin up your own cloud server. This is such a sweet system. All of these rigs are backed by Linux and KVM virtualization. They have HTML5 consoles, so you can get right to the machine from any device. They have a brilliant interface, and it's all SSDs throughout their entire infrastructure. And so they've managed to pair great solid hardware with really fast connections, and then, of course, KVM. And it's just such a great setup. And that's like the technicals of DigitalOcean. But that isn't the secret sauce of DigitalOcean. Here's some secret sauce. You can get started in less than 55 seconds. And pricing plans start at only $5 a month. $5 a month. You get you 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, all SSDs, one CPU, and a terabyte. Oh, a terabyte of transfer. I should just I can make this into a wrap, I think. DigitalOcean also has data center locations in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, London, and Germany. This is critical because with the pricing, it just makes a lot of sense if you want to spin up multiple data centers in multiple different data centers and have a little redundancy or load balancing. It makes a lot of sense. Also, something that DigitalOcean doesn't really make a big stink about, but it's pretty neat, and you can do this like if you're in the same data center, and they have a lot of different data centers to choose from in different regions. So check this out in their interface. But you can go in some of their data centers and set up private networking. So you can have multiple droplets, like a front-facing droplet, maybe run an Nginx, right? And then you can have some back-end droplets, maybe a data store, a SQL database, backup, standby. I mean, when we're talking $5 a month, why not? But here's this is like the really cool part. It's like the secret sauce here that I'm telling you now. That private networking, no transfer charges over that private networking. So you could, if you did like front-end proxying, or if you could have your servers backing up over that private networking, and it's not going against your transfer because it's all there local in your data center. So also the speeds are nuts, right? It's a super great way to do this. This is you can start using DigitalOcean in some really advanced and sophisticated ways. And they have like one-click deployment of applications. And there's a lot of really great ways to utilize Docker up on DigitalOcean and CoreOS, which is really fascinating. Their interface makes all of this possible. It's simple and intuitive, and you can replicate it on a larger scale with their straightforward API. And the community has a lot of great apps and libraries already available using the API. It's great. So go over to DigitalOcean, try it out right now. They also have technical writers that go through and edit their tutorials. And they're often accepting tutorials too. In fact, they're willing to pay for those tutorials. So I encourage you to go over to DigitalOcean and just look through the tutorial section too, so you can see even after you've deployed your Linux machine or your FreeBSD machine, you're going to have a lot more you can do with it. So go over to DigitalOcean.com and use the promo code CODERDigital. And a big thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Coder Radio program. They have some great systems over there. Go check it out. And also, take advantage of the easy backups. Might as well save yourself some hassle. Okay, so above Avalon, an Apple analysis from Wall Street to Silicon Valley blog has been blogging for a little while about iPad sales, and everybody's just kind of been writing it off, but now it's almost getting too hard to ignore, and I want to talk about the tablet market. He says right here, the tablet market is in complete disarray. Only 5 short years ago, the iPad helped jumpstart the category, ushering in multi-touch computing and modern-day app revolution to large-screen devices. Today, there's never been a time when the tablet market faces so much unknown. Okay, now this is kind of interesting, especially if Apple's trying to get developers to create new versions of iPad apps for iOS 9, or at least update them. And of course, Microsoft wants to sell the Surface. A quick look at iPad and tablet shipment data would show that things have gotten bad in recent quarters. However, in reality, things are much worse than quarterly shipment data would suggest. The seasonality found in the tablet segments is difficult to see. It makes it difficult to see these long-term problems. As a much better way to understanding what has been taking place is to look at the year-over-year change in shipments on a trailing 12-month basis. Now, this smoothing effect he's applied here, when we scroll down here, it is devastatingly bad. As he puts it, the iPad tablet has been on decline for years, and things continue to worsen. The overall tablet market hitting a negative territory for the first time. All momentum in the market has been lost. It's now below, the iPad is literally below 0%. I don't quite understand. He goes on to say that in reality, one reason sales momentum was slowing for iPad owners, they're not upgrading their devices. Different data shows, and his own estimates, consumers have held onto their iPads on average for 3 years, which is longer than the iPhone's 2.6-year upgrade cycle. Since the tablet category is still young, the iPad 3-year cycle is still extending and will likely go out as far as 5 to 6 years. And then, to conclude, the continued migration of smartphone manufacturers to 5+ inch screens isn't helping the matter either. And he says another consequence of growing large-screen smartphones' popularity is that becoming increasingly difficult for Apple to market the iPad Air or iPad Mini. Features such as cameras and even Touch ID simply don't make as much sense on a device that can't be comfortably held in one hand or carried in a pocket. The iPad market and the tablet market is in trouble, and there is no change made to the lineup. Peak iPad is on the table. Peak iPad is a simple concept driven by the belief that underlying structural changes to the tablet market would result in the iPad losing most of its value propositions, leading to a prominent decline in sales. For example, Peak iPad is alive and well, even though Apple is still selling iPods. I'm sorry, Peak iPod. Peak iPod is alive and well, even though Apple is still selling iPods. The product category will never reach record quarterly sales again. Dun, dun, dun. Have we reached peak iPad? Is the tablet market sort of a snore, Mr. Dominic? Like, these devices, what? People are using them to watch Netflix. They're watching Netflix. Why do I need a new tablet to watch Netflix?
Nobody's doing anything large with them.
No. That's the problem, right? And so but here's why I bring this up. The iPad was going to save the newspaper industry. The iPad was going to save the publishing industry. The iPad was going to give iOS developers a whole new platform to target, and it was going to make a whole bunch of more money for iOS developers. It was all going to be it was going to destroy the PC. It was going to be the post-PC era. The iPad ushered in the post-PC era. No. All bust. Technology is just kind of fading away. I actually wouldn't have thought that was a boom. I don't think they're gone. I just think they are an accessory device. They're not going to be the primary device that everybody hoped they were. And when it's an accessory device, you're not as inclined to upgrade it as often. It's more like an entertainment device. It's more like your TV or a
it's
DVR.
A consumption device.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So not worth targeting, or only worth targeting if you're making a consumption app or something loosely connected to that, I guess?
That's probably the case, unfortunately.
Ouch. Well, maybe, do you think iOS 9 with, it hasn't made a difference on Android, has it? And maybe not really on the Surface either, with side-by-side apps and things like that. I just don't really know if it's going to make a big difference. Yeah, it's interesting. Steve Jobs, if he knew now what's happening, I don't think he'd be happy. All right, so we also in the show notes, by the way, we have a link to Rich Glenrich's blog, I think is how you say it. Oh, no, it's not how you say it. He's an open source developer, graphics programmer. He's been in the industry for a long time. He's a recovering OpenGL addict. He's worked at Valve, Microsoft, DigitalOcean. He's worked on Oculus, and he's got a great post about why OpenGL is got to go. He's, first of all, number one, 20 years of legacy. It needs a robust and major simplification pass. Number two, GL context creation hell. Number three, the thread's current context may be implied this point, quote unquote, this pointer. He goes on with a whole bunch of reasons here. And wow. Extension hell is number 26. I would have thought it would have been sooner, higher in the list. But great post if you want to know why people are so desperate to replace OpenGL. Our next story, the page is not loading because I think it's getting a whole bunch of attention right now because it's from a really well-known Apple developer who creates software that we use here in production, one of the last proprietary pieces of software we use to get the shows out the door. So his page is not loading right now, and I really kind of want to talk about this because it's actually affecting the network, and it affects a lot of people that have tried to put their different applications in different stores. So while that loads, I'll do a quick Linux Academy read, and we'll see if the page will load after that. All right, Mr. Dominic, you stand by over there. This is your chance to get yourself a coffee. We'll see if that page loads. I'm getting a database error right now, but I'm trying to get the Google Cache version to load. So we'll see. It's down to the wire. You know what I need is something really dramatic to make it like we'll see. Like, come on, tell me where the database is. Jack Bauer kind of style. But no, unfortunately, you don't get anything like that in this podcast. We don't have any high production sound effects or anything like that. So while we try to get the database back, I'll tell you about Linux Academy. Go over to linuxacademy.com/coders and get the Coder Radio discount. I love Linux Academy because it's created by people truly passionate about the subject material. They're not just doing it because it's a feature. It's not just something on the website they can say they have. I love it because they really, truly are passionate. And that's great because that makes the difference, doesn't it? That means they're following this stuff because they want to, and that really reflects in the content. And I think that is fantastic. But from a practical standpoint, it also is just a great educational resource. They have step-by-step video courses, downloadable comprehensive study guides you can take with you. It comes with your own server, just spins it up on demand in the courseware as, and get this. The courseware, you get to choose from 7+ Linux distributions. So the courseware will match the distro you choose. The virtual server matches the distro you choose. It's all customized to that. Now, from a production standpoint, that is amazing. We considered when we were trying to launch How To Linux, we considered doing that, and it was an unbelievable amount of work. But you know what? That's the difference, right? Because they really care. And they have scenario-based labs that way you get real hands-on experience. You'll go through something, and you get to actually experience it. That way you get, actual experience under your belt. Now, when you go to do it in a job scenario or for a client or for an employer, it's not your first time. And that kind of confidence really feels a lot better, and it makes it much easier to focus on the work. And if you ever get stuck in Linux Academy, they have instructor help available. They've just rolled out new courseware too, so I encourage you, if you're already subscribed to Linux Academy, go over there and check out the new courseware. It's super exciting, and they have a great forum where you can interact with a community that's stacked full of Jupiter Broadcasting community members. These nuggets are a lot of fun. Anywhere from like 2 minutes to 60 minutes, just deep dive into a course. And of course, they have a broad range of anything around really Linux and open source. Android development, OpenStack, Docker, virtualization, all the things you would expect, plus the essentials, backing up, managing and administrating a Linux system, introduction to package management in Linux, like all of the intro basics too if you're just getting started or need to reacquaint yourself with some of those. They've got all of that. And you do all of it by getting started at linuxacademy.com/coders. That supports this show, and it gets you the discount. linuxacademy.com/coders. linuxacademy.com/coders. And a special thank you to Linux Academy for sponsoring the Coder Radio on a Friday. linuxacademy.com/coders. Thanks, Linux Academy. Okay, so let's see if the page cache load. Stupid thing. Why is this not working? Well, I have an annotated version that I can pull up here. So you guys just won't get the visual of it, but that's okay, right? We don't mind. I can still read it to you. So this is coming from the Reinvented blog, which is the developer of Feeder. Feeder is over 10 years old. It predates the Mac App Store. It's mostly used by podcasters, but also some developers and people who run websites. It's essentially a front end to generate clean, standards-based XML files that you can then use to create RSS feeds. And a lot of podcasters like this because there's a lot of automatic podcast feed generators out there. Everything from SoundCloud to FeedBurner will generate a feed for you. The issue is, if any of these ever have an outage or ever have a mistake, all of your listeners suffer the consequences. And early on, especially when FeedBurner was transitioning from an independent company over to Google, we ran into a lot of problems. And people ended up getting multiple downloads and just, mixed up feeds, and people thought it was our fault. And so the solution was to move it over to a manual feed processing application. And then we point FeedBurner at that, and we control the actual files that go into the feed, and then FeedBurner just acts as a republisher. It's complicated. The reason why I'm telling you this, though, is because we're not the only shop that does this. It's pretty much, it's amazing. Everybody out there really, a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people out there using this application to do this. Even sites that now Twit just recently stopped when they rolled out a new website. But even podcasts that have like 25 people that run the staff and have I don't know how many shows they have, they're publishing it with this one application called Feeder. So it's a pretty important application. And when they entered the Mac App Store, it was interesting to see what happened. And he talks about the advantages and disadvantages of the Mac App Store in this post, but I'm not really going to talk about that point. That's specific to the Mac App Store. What I want to talk about is what's universal to all app stores, all developers. If Ubuntu had an app store that went cray big, if the Microsoft Store actually ever sold anything, any of that, it applies here. And it's Apple's 30% of all sales. And he says, whether the app costs $1 or $100, even though not all of my sales go through the App Store, Apple's 30% cut far exceeds what I pay the UK government in income tax and national insurance each year. And for that, I get things like healthcare, pension, education, transport, emergency services, defense, etc. To think of it another way, if I add up all the money they've taken since the store's launch in 2011, it could pay for my rent for almost 7 years. This 30% this 30% cut is having a devastating effect on me, particularly since Together, his other best-selling app, has predominantly moved to the Mac App Store sales for iCloud support. Consider the irony that I can't afford to buy the Apple kit I need to develop and test the apps they're selling. He can't buy the very gear he needs because of the cut they're taking. All things being equal, if Apple had taken 10% of my money over the last few years, I'd have no problem at all. Same if they'd taken 15%. At 20, I'd be breaking even, but 30% is killing me. Wow. Do you agree, Mr. Dominic, is 30% too much? Is it time to revisit this? Or is this just, sorry, you structured the business wrong, it's time to adapt to the app market ways?
I think it's sorry you structured the business wrong, unfortunately.
Really?
Yeah, I think it is. But
how could it cost Apple $15 to ship a $50 app?
It doesn't, but they're doing the credit card processing, they're hosting it. I mean, it's obviously not a break-even kind of thing. It's more of a time thing, right? They're doing all these things for you.
It feels like 20%, maybe 15% would be more reasonable.
Yeah, but in the bad old days of working with a publisher, you would get a lot less than 70%.
Yeah,
right?
you're right.
Remember,
you're
this
right.
Is a big improvement.
In
on
fact,
what it used to
in
be.
fact, and sometimes they would change the product name, they would change the logo and the packaging.
But they'd remove your branding from it, and they'd treat it as their own, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Huh.
You might not get anything until you sold a certain volume.
I have a hard time though because this guy, he's been around for a long time. He's a reliable developer. This is kind of his gig, and he's saying that Apple's cut makes it impossible for him to sell software on there. See, he used to do direct sales. I don't know if he ever sold it as a box copy.
Right. He's probably never had the experience of the battle.
I guess that's where I find the flaw in your argument. It's not a 1 or a 0. It doesn't have to be in the App Store or on a box shelf because direct sales is absolutely a possibility.
Okay, then you have to put up your own store. I mean, no one's stopping him from doing that in terms of on iPad they are. Yeah, I don't buy it. I mean, the reality is people pay for software less than they used to, right?
What about trying to up the price? Like, that would just devastate sales?
It's very hard to raise the price, right? It's easy to lower. Now, what you could do is this is a version 3 or whatever, right? And then up the price, but...
We've seen some developers who will do a discount on their website. Did you try that? Did you try that for a little while?
I did. It ultimately didn't matter.
People would prefer the App Store version, or what? There's a convenience factor to App Stores, so that's...
Yeah, people prefer the App Store version. I will say on the App Store, I got a lot more kind of casual users, which had very different expectations than the people who are buying via the web. Yeah, but that's a whole different can of worms.
I don't know. I want to disagree with you because I like this guy so much. I'd like the audience's opinion too. Is 30% too much? And what's Google's take is 32, right? Is that chat room? Do you remember what Google's take is? I can't recall.
It's 30, yeah.
Yeah. Is 30% too much? Coderradio.reddit.com. Look for 167. All right, real quick. I liked this because Lifehacker had a how to know when you're ready to freelance as a self-taught coder. And the reason why I liked it is it's not a huge long ass post. It's just 4 solid reasons. Are you ready for them? And I want to just tell me if you agree. Okay. In general, you'll know when you're ready to take the leap to do these if you can do these 4 things. Number 1, build a couple of projects and be able to show them off. Okay. Number 2, talk about decisions and reasons for making certain design or development choices. Number 3, look at someone else's work and find areas that you are able to improve. And number 4, go on Stack Exchange or similar and answer more questions than you need to ask. I don't know about that last one, but what do you think, Mr. Dominic?
I don't know about that last one at all. I think that's a little...
So would these 3 reasons be enough of a litmus test to know if you're ready to go out on your own? Build a couple of projects, show them off?
I think you're okay to start doing side projects once you can convince someone to hire you for them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like this is just a tiny fraction of what it takes to go off on your own, to be honest with you. Nothing in here says anything about money management.
Well, contracts and what happens when somebody's not happy, right?
And what do you do when the cash flow doesn't come in for a little while? And, then all of a sudden a bunch of cash comes in. These kinds of things also you need to be ready for before you go off on your own. See, the thing is this is a market. What this is they're advertising a free worksheet to know when your skills are ready. And then you click here to download. See, I'm going to try to download it. Yeah, there you go. Then you have to give your email address, and it has a 50% complete. So this is just a way. So they're just trying to sell to these people. This is kind of dirty, actually. Lifehacker. I'm a little disappointed that Lifehacker sort of propagated this.
It's a little too crap for me.
Two things you should never. This is no good. See, this is just trying to make money off people that are trying to make this decision about people that are daydreaming about leaving their day job. That's what they're trying to make money off of here. This is no good. I do not like this. So there you go, subreddit. There's our take on that. They wanted to hear our take on it. There's our take on it. That's no good. That is no good. While we're in the other things that people wanted us to take a look at, we had some good feedback. Last week we were trying to speculate. Are we seeing an increase in enterprises hiring iOS developers because we're seeing an increase in Macs and iOS devices in enterprise? Well, Phil and C writes in. He says, most enterprise IT departments are not hiring in-house iOS developers.
Agreed.
Heck, they're barely hiring Java developers anymore. New app development in the enterprise is mostly farmed out, usually overseas.
Yeah.
And that includes apps for mobile devices. As Dominic quipped, they're spending their money on licensing PhoneGap and other mobile software frameworks and not on actual in-house talent to do the work. Well, that's depressing.
That's exactly what I have been saying the whole time.
So now what?
Well, now what? Nothing. It's how many companies still have shipping and receiving in their company and they don't just farm it out to UPS, right? I mean, how many companies, big companies have in-house accounting, but a lot of companies don't, right? They farm it out to H&R Block or a CPA. Why would you expect them to have a full in-house fleet there?
Well, hello there.
I know. I don't know what's going on behind me.
Yeah, it sounds like someone's coming into your crypt.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess I would expect enterprises to want to have custom applications. I guess I'm romanticizing that they would.
No, you're totally romanticizing. Here's what the enterprises want. The manager running the project wants to make sure they either get great results to justify the spend or spend so little money that it doesn't matter.
See, back in my day, you had a couple developers on staff because you needed them.
You might have a couple, but you have a couple like general web guys just doing your day to day.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're right. That is true. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're doing more maintenance than anything else.
Yeah, and it's, I guess, just more and more common to outsource it. But there is still people that are looking for local stuff too. Yeah. Okay. So we had one more story that the subreddit wanted to submit for our Friday edition of the show. Nice of them to do this for us, and they wanted to get our take. Let's see. Let me go back. Let me get the name. I'll try to give credit to whoever submitted this. So Carrie Hartline and J.I. Meek both wanted to get our take on the presumption of stupidity, and it goes a little something like this, Mr. Dominic. This is over on Aaron's blog. He says, "I've noticed a common bias that shows up in some founders." And I want to know, as somebody who's maybe had some competition, I'd like to get your take on this. He says they believe that their competitors are stupid or uncreative. They look at other businesses and identify inefficiencies and bad systems, and then they decide that those conditions exist because of dumb decisions on part of the founders or employees. He says this is a bad belief to hold. In truth, competitors in the market are usually founded and run by intelligent people making smart and logical decisions. It doesn't mean that all the decisions they make are necessarily the right ones, but they really and rarely function out of outright stupidity. When companies do things that diverge from what seems like a smart idea from the outside, it's much better idea to ask why those companies are doing things from the presumption of intelligence and logic rather than the presumption of stupidity. If you don't ask these questions, you might find yourself making the same decisions or ending up in the same place with your own set of rationalizations. I see this all the time. Essentially assuming your competition is dumb and that they haven't figured it out, and that it could make you maybe a little slow, a little lazy. What are your insights on this?
So I always assume my competition is smarter and better than me in terms of capitalization and like business processes.
So you stay nice and paranoid. Yeah.
Well, the problem is you tend to be right.
Yeah.
For instance, if your competition is VC backed, they're better capitalized than you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or if you're doing consulting, right? Sometimes you can't afford to lose the sale, which is usually when you lose the sale.
Yeah.
Because you reek of that, right?
Or another way, it can even be like one project is Indiegogo or Kickstarter backed. Even it doesn't even have to be a VC these days.
Right. I have, of all the competitors and anything I've ever done that I've met, they've usually been better at some things and a lot worse at others. But the thing is that quality of development is usually not that important, unfortunately, right? Networking is extremely important. Business processes are extremely important. Those are all things I'm terrible at, by the way. I would say that if you're walking around and you're doing anything and you're saying, oh, well, my competition are a bunch of morons, then you're probably shooting yourself in the foot. You might get away with it for a while, but I can't possibly imagine a case where that's helpful. I mean, unless your competition were like doing coke off their MacBook or something, like unless it's really something crazy. Let's just take an easy case of like 2 IT services shops or 2 dev shops head to head. There's probably certainly technical things one is better at than the other, but that usually doesn't matter, right?
Yeah. Okay, so maybe let's look at this from another angle, actually. Let's talk about this. So is there actually a point in time where you're really doing yourself a disservice by looking at your competition too much? Like, you can only, maybe like looking in the rearview mirror isn't the right way to put it, but there's only so much value in looking at somebody else. He goes on to say, truly great businesses aren't built as counterpoints to existing companies. They become great because they meet a deep need that isn't being satisfied. That usually requires the kinds of creative and cognitive leaps that no amount of market analysis could possibly give you. So he says that no matter how much you analyze those whose decisions have left you with opportunity, at the end of the day, here it is, there's only so much you can learn from looking at your competitors. And I really agree with that. Like, the issue is more like, are you solving a specific need and niche, and not so much what are your competitors doing? I almost think there's a disservice in watching your competitors too closely. But it's like you got to walk a line there. You kind of have to keep an eye on what's going on, but at the same time, you don't necessarily want to be consumed by it. You don't want to let it be what gets the most of even a little bit of your attention too much. Really, I think, in my opinion, because then that gets in the way of your creation. In a way, like you can spend too much time obsessing about them.
Yeah, so there's a danger of spending too much and too little, right?
Yeah. Like, how do you know where that line is even? I don't know.
I don't think you do, because I don't think there's anybody that well adjusted to be like, this is the appropriate amount of attention to pay. I think you're either overly paranoid or you're just a babe in the woods and don't know what the hell you're doing.
Yeah, it just comes and goes at different levels at different times depending on what's going on. Yeah, that's probably it. That's nice. Grasshopper, that's nice. So, hey, you know what the rest of my afternoon is filled with? You ready for this? My dad's getting married, and I'm the best man.
Oh, God, congratulations. And you're the best man? Congratulations.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Yeah.
What, I mean, are you ironically the best man because you're like the worst man I've ever met? Or
it's funny. It's funny because this is one of those family things that it just, you're glad that you don't do a lot often. But it started with my dad came up to me and he's like, hey, boy, I just want to let you know that I hope you don't mind, but Josette and I, we're going to go elope. And it's not that we don't want to celebrate with you guys. We might have a little party when we get back. But we're just going to do something private. I'm like, oh, gosh, that's great, Dad. That's great. And, of course, I'm thinking to myself, sweet, I don't have to take time off work. And then a couple months go by, and it's like, hey, would you mind being my best man? We're going to have a little bit bigger of a ceremony. I'm like, oh, no, that'd be great. And then my wife speaks up, and she says, hey, would you like Dylan and Abby to be Ring Bear and Flower Girl? And they say, oh, no, we're not going to do anything all that big, so we'll just keep it simple. We're not going to have a Flower Girl or Ring Bear. And I think, whew, dodged a bullet on that one, because let's face it, getting a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old set up for a wedding is
not a great plan.
No. So then like a week goes by, and we get a text message, and they tell us how excited they are to have Dylan and Abby as the Ring Bear and Flower Girl. And so now, of course, that means we have to get outfits for everybody. We have to get everybody's haircut. We got to do all this stuff. And so we went to rehearsal last night. Now today, we have to show up at 3 o'clock. The wedding's at 5 o'clock. Now, see, we have 3 children, 2 years old, 4 years old, and 6 years old. To bring them to a place, even for an hour, is a little hectic. To bring them to a place that they have to be at for that long and then participate in the wedding is going to be a little crazy. So that's my Friday. And then Monday and Tuesday, we're going to be at LinuxCon. So that's why we're recording Coda Radio on a Friday today, is because Monday I'll be down at LinuxCon. So if you're down at LinuxCon in Seattle, come say hi. I'm sure Mr. Dominic will be there, right? Yeah, you're just going to
I'm just gonna fly. I'm gonna take my Linux copter.
Yeah, right. Take the Linux copter. You're not taking the Linux mobile this time, huh? Because it's not a bad drive. You could take Highway 2 pretty much the whole way.
Well, I've had my Linux license suspended for driving while under the influence of Mac.
Hey, wait a minute. There you go. You get a ding for that. That's good. That was real good. All right, Mr. Dominic, anything else we need to cover on this Friday edition?
No, I think that's it. Program? I have to boogity out of here, so it's been a pleasure.
I got to get to, you know what? I got the suit, I got the shirt, I got the tie, I forgot shoes. So I've got to go get shoes before I run off to the picture taking. So that's what I'm doing for the afternoon, which I just love, shoe shopping. All right, well, here's a little bit of details before we go. coderradio.reddit.com. Submit topics, show ideas, and feedback, please. Also, another great, like the number one spot for feedback, and do send them in. Let's bulk up our feedback section. Go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact and choose Coder Radio from the drop-down and send in your emails. We'll be back next Monday. We do this show live at noon Pacific, which is 3 p.m. Eastern over at jblive.tv. You can go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar. Mr. Dominic, if you want to send anybody anywhere throughout the week, let them know where to go.
Just at Dumanuka on Twitter.
Okay, at Dumanuka. All right, you can follow me on Twitter too, at Chris LAS. I'll be like that. At Jupiter Signal, we might have some LinuxCon shenanigans going down over there. Also, you never know, we might have something on the Instagram feed from LinuxCon. What are we? I think we're just Jupiter Broadcasting on Instagram. Nice and easy. Instagram.com/Jupiter Broadcasting or whatever. Get some pictures from LinuxCon. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for doing this week's episode of Coder Radio. See you back here next week.